Today, Frontier announced the release date for Elite Dangerous Odyssey, which is the 19th of May. So, just a few weeks, less than a month, and Odyssey will be making its way to all stores on the PC platform. That's Steam, Epic, and the Frontier Store. No word yet as to whether it'll be on the Oculus Store, but as Odyssey doesn't officially fully support VR, I would assume not. Now, on the PC in terms of alpha, we're currently in Phase 3 out of 4 phases. The 4th phase doesn't have a release date just yet, but Frontier have mentioned on their Twitter account that it should be happening at some point next week. So what happens with Phase 4 is that the alpha will open up to the entire galaxy. Player accounts will be copied from the live server onto the alpha server, so you'll have access to all your credits, all your ships, all your engineering, and everything else. That's not to say that Phase 4 will contain absolutely everything. A few things are going to be held back for release. One of these is the full implementation of the new Planetary Tech. The Planetary Tech we have in alpha right now, the stuff you can see on screen right here, is only a partial implementation. How this will differ to the full release we don't yet know, but I'll assume at the very least some additional colours in the atmospheres and hopefully slightly thicker atmospheres as well. Whilst Odyssey will only feature tenuous atmospheres, so far in alpha we've had access to atmospheric pressures of 0.09 psi or thereabouts up to that, which incidentally enough is very close to the atmospheric pressure of Mars today in the real world. So that, combined with the trailers we saw early on with Odyssey, should give us some indication as to what we can expect with atmospheres in Odyssey. Now unfortunately there's no list of what other things are going to be held back for release, but as a guess, pure speculation here, I'd imagine the plasma weapons are going to be held back. Likely it'll be released before we see the new Odyssey-based engineers, and what we do have confirmation of is that Thargoid and Guardian structures will not be available during the alpha. In terms of changes that will be made between now and release, one thing that we do know is that the little mini-game for plant-based scanning is going to be removed, which, well, thankfully for that. Instead, there'll just be a point-and-click option where you just point the scanner at the plant, press the button, and the scan will be complete. Beyond that, it seems with the phases 1, 2 and 3, we've seen more or less everything that Odyssey has to offer, with the exception of the few additions that I mentioned earlier in the video. With all that information out of the way then, let's move on to my thoughts about Odyssey so far. Of course, I can only talk about my experience with Alpha. Obviously, we don't know what's going to be the final state of things when it releases, but so far, overall, I found Odyssey to be a very hit-and-miss thing. There's some aspects of it that are very, very good. There's other aspects of it that are definitely in need of improvements. Now, I don't want this video to come across as a complaint because it certainly isn't. I just want to express my feelings on the experience so far. And also, that shouldn't be seen as my final thoughts because obviously we haven't seen the final version of Odyssey yet. So, how do I feel? Well, let's start with exploration, the thing most recently added to the alpha. I think this is extremely limited, unfortunately. I went into quite some detail about this in my video on the plant scanner. Unfortunately, I just think there's not going to be enough variety there. Rather than going for hard-coded plants, I think Frontier should have gone for procedurally generated life. Yes, they did mention they've quadrupled the amount of plant-based life that is available in Odyssey, but we're talking about 400 billion different star systems here and potentially trillions of landable planets. So the amount of variety of life that should be discoverable across that entire region of the galaxy, well, it should be significant to say the least. On the positive side, the Planetary Tech is already looking amazing. Although we haven't got the full implementation of it just yet, it's looking very, very good nonetheless, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where all this goes. Sticking with the subject of visuals for the moment, in addition to the great Planetary Tech, the other graphical upgrades are very nice as well. The improvements to the ships themselves are brilliant, as are the various effects around the ships, which include weapons and shield effects. You may have seen some of those in the various videos and live streams. And of course, the big feature, getting out on foot. It's brilliant to finally see the interior of stations and to see the scale of things from a first-person on-foot perspective, something that Elite has really needed and has been missing up until this point. After all, the ships are truly massive, and that sense of scale just really hasn't been apparent until this point. Not even really in VR, I'd hazard to say. Now, very much related to visuals is the animations. And it's here where Odyssey does have some pretty significant issues. Now, rather than going into all this myself right here in this video, again, I really want to keep this as a summary for my thoughts rather than a deep dive. Do check out this video right here. The video goes into amazing detail comparing first-person shooter animations between Odyssey and other games. And if Odyssey has ever felt a bit off to you, this might explain why. The full video is linked in the video description, be sure to check it out. And then we come to the combat, and this is where my feelings are very mixed. It's nice at last to have an FPS component, and it's nice to have some combat from that perspective. However, as far as I'm concerned, at this stage at least, it's very basic. For anyone who's played shooters over the past 5 years, they'd easily be able to tell you that Odyssey kind of has mechanics from shooters circa 2010. Now, on its own, this isn't necessarily a bad thing because shooting mechanics from the first-person perspective are an addition to Elite Dangerous, they're not the pure focus. However, with the high-quality shooters that are out there, it's very hard not to make a direct comparison. And when it comes to these comparisons, Odyssey really does struggle to hold up on its own. I'll wait for a future video to go into full details on all of this, as I think it's beyond the scope of this particular video. It does really require a dedicated video. But here's a few bullet points. Frontline support getting into the conflict zones. These are a lot of fun. The matches are relatively fast-paced, and the AI is pretty good and is able to work in tandem. However, the tactics that the players can use here are fairly limited depending on how you take your approach. More often than not, I simply use the backpack to launch up in the air and shoot rockets everywhere. With this method, it's very easy to eliminate pretty much all the NPCs, and is really going back to the very old school arena type ideas for shooters. But tactics and the pace of this whole thing is likely to change once engineering upgrades and modifications are available, so yep, for any final analysis on that, we're going to have to wait and see. Another thing I'd like to see in conflict zones would be capturable targets in the terms of turrets and other such things. Now, catchable turrets would be very good because they would add an extra dimension to the gameplay. If one side could temporarily capture a turret, the turrets would then be able to target ships of the opposing side. And this will deal with the issue where you've no doubt seen videos of ships coming in and ramming NPC on player targets as they drop into combat, and of course the mine drop-in and the missile spam as well. So rather than making this totally impossible, make it a part of the game by introducing capturable turrets. Moving on to the subject of missions, I found them to be pretty entertaining and some of them are quite a lot of fun. However, I'm really hoping there's going to be more variety for these when release comes around. One aspect I've really enjoyed is the new point of interest system. Locating a point of interest whilst up in space, flying down to it onto the planetary surface, and then getting out either in the SRV and then on foot, or driving around on SRV and then getting out on foot from there, has proven to really add a whole new layer and dimension to the Elite Dangerous experience. So for me at least, I think there's quite a lot of playability in that aspect alone. So, like I say, very hit and miss, plenty of good parts and plenty of parts that's still in a desperate need of improvement. My worry here is that the 19th of May for the release date is very close, so it seems extremely unlikely there's going to be any dramatic changes made between now and then. One dramatic change that does need to be made, hopefully, is performance issues, as a lot of people are having a lot of problems still with performance in Odyssey, so if nothing else, I hope at least that gets fixed. So essentially, very much a mixed bag. And another thought on that, it certainly isn't a complaint at the developers themselves, who without a doubt would have worked very hard on Odyssey and Elite Dangerous over the past few years. Wherever all these decisions come from, I doubt very much that it's from the developers themselves, who I basically feel have gone all out and done the best they could with what they had. So then, this definitely isn't a complaint video, although I know there's going to be a few people out there that see it that way. Ultimately, I'm just calling it like I see it. Do let me know your thoughts and feelings on Odyssey and the entire alpha process so far in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time.